This essay will not just offer a suite of 5 solutions, it will solve the problem of moral perfection. Along with these solutions will be a way to reform the world, morally, logically, and spiritually. These solutions are functional. They work because they are morally perfect. They do not depend on people with freedom figuring out how best to implement them. Accountability is generally considered a term belonging to moral philosophy, but accountability is just another name for moral culpability. Moral persons are required to pay any cost they create. From this position, we derive both the free market and the concept of the social contract. The doctrine of accountability restates the dictum, "He who will not work, neither ought he to eat." Meaning if you did not earn your meal, it is you who ought to go hungry, not someone else. Those who do not work must be the ones who bear the cost. The solutions given below work because they hold people accountable for the costs they create. There is no freedom permitted. Life needs to be made predictable. As humans, we have lived in a system that lacks accountability. The people making the problems are making them because they are not paying the price of what they do or do not do. This lack of accountability is the price we pay for freedom. Technologically, we have made many advances. But for all of this progress, we are less able to feed or house people. There is plenty of money to finance projects, but these seem to be projects help the rich more than the poor. There is funds for projects which concentrate wealth in fewer hands, but not much for projects that spread the wealth. There is less risk and greater potential profit, lending funds to the top 10% than in providing funds to the millions that make up the lower 10%. It's not that banks do not want everyone to be fed and housed, but there are too many other projects with better chances of producing a return than lending small amounts to millions of people. Yet, few, if any, do not think poverty could be ended if the right mix of investments could be made. When we look at the unhoused, there is no objective reason why we could not house everyone. However, the mechanisms to this do not exist. Our inability to provide solutions is excused as being an issue of priorities. We want to provide housing, but we also need to pay bills and maintain existing structures. In other words, there is no money sitting unused. Every dollar has a dozen different places it could go. Theoretically, the government could advance construction companies $1 trillion to build homes. But money does not build anything. If the construction industry is occupied with other projects, additional funds would not produce a single new residence. Money looks like an answer, but this is an illusion. Often it creates more problems than it solves. At best, it might be correlated to a solution, but money by itself builds nothing. What is worse, if all the homes are being built that can be built with the available resources, doubling the money available for construction will not produce more homes, but is likely to cause inflation and higher prices for the same number of homes. Money can only be obtained by working or borrowing. We are employed only if we earn our wages, plus what the owner wants as a profit. We could borrow money to invest in a house, but this means an opportunity cost for the lender. The lender could have used the money for something else. The borrower must compensate the lender for the cost of the lost opportunity. There are no solutions that would fix the state. We looked at the only 2 options. Money can be borrowed to pay for the needed reforms, or we can work and change things using the profit motive. It may seem a small problem, but in one case the provider is paying interest, and in the other, profits are being removed from the pocket of the worker, which deprives him of a portion of what rightfully belongs to him or her. However, there are 5 solutions that are not subject to the issue of profiteering or interest payments, and which can be implemented without regard for the state. Making war redundant. War is the ultimate expression of this system. When all else fails, war is the fallback response for nations. Lesser jurisdictions make do with acts of violence at a lower scale. A priori and small groups follow an algorithm that circumvents the Nimrodian system. The small group is formed with people who want peace and believe the best way to achieve peace is to prevent all forms of parasitism. Parasitism causes war. Simply by forming into pacific small groups, we make redundant the Nimrodian system and its algorithm. Pacific guilds are small groups that represent a political jurisdiction composed of people who literally work for peace. Guilds operate in accordance with the doctrine of subsidiarity, the golden rule, and the labor theory of value. The doctrine of subsidiarity means power remains at the base and higher-level assemblies have no other than what has specifically been assigned to it by the lower assembly. The upper-level authorities do not have access to resources necessary to wage anything but a reactionary war. a war waged in response to an attack from a foreign power. As Pacific guilds form and take over the productive activities of the economy, war becomes a thing of the past. The elimination of petty crime. Major crime is better left to the established system for the present. However, the system of justice we have is ill-suited for preventing property and nuisance crimes. Imagine the judiciary attempting to deal with a youthful person accused of a petty crime. Schools are put on alert, teachers and principals are summoned to meet with parents and police. The police investigate and write lengthy reports which are then forwarded to the justice system. Lawyers, judges, and assistant attorney generals become involved. After that comes children's services, parole officers, the prison system, and all of its guards and administrators if the child ever incurs any punishment which is doubtful, unless the crime is too serious to ignore. There may be various other professionals called in, such as those in the mental health field. How many people, how much resources, and how much money does it take to deal with a punk disrupting class or caught shoplifting? The trend is to let the victim absorb the costs of the crime. That is not the way to have peace. Small irritations develop into more serious problems. Crime is an economic problem and an injustice requiring compensation. Otherwise, we are validating parasitism. A crime is a deviation from market norms. But for there to be a deviation, there must be a standard to measure the deviation against. The standard is the level at which peace exists. Peace is the social norm. In terms of the market, peace is found when all credits and debts balance. Criminals as enemies of the peace are not eligible to exercise the rights of a citizen. At minimum, all citizens are required to have an account in good standing. Persons who fail to reconcile their account are incapable of being full citizens until their account is reconciled. The purpose of the justice system is to ensure all accounts maintain a minimum standard, the standard that marks one as a citizen in good standing. The path of seeking justice follows the path laid down by Scripture. The aggrieved goes to the accused and presents him or her with the details of the issue. The desire is to seek a resolution, defined by a reconciliation of both accounts. If the resolution is not reached, the plaintiff explains the problem and proposed solution to a fellow citizen. The citizen then accompanies the plaintiff to set the matter before the accused to hear the arguments of both parties. If there is still no resolution, then the matter is taken up by the Pacific guilds, who hear the matter and adjudicate the proceedings, then render a verdict. The accounts of the litigant and defendant are reconciled. If there is a matter that prevents full reconciliation, the court issues a judgment laying out the conditions by which reconciliation is to be achieved. If the conditions are not met in a timely fashion, citizenship is abrogated until such time as the account is reconciled, at which time citizenship can be reinstated, perhaps with conditions and limitations. If there is no resolution possible, the accused is ostracized and ultimately banished. To illustrate the process, a property is vandalized. The suspect is approached and asked to restore the condition of the property. If this is not done to the satisfaction of the plaintiff, an adjudicator is notified, and the plaintiff approached with the adjudicator as witness. If the accounts of the litigants are not reconciled by this means, the court is convened and the case heard. The accused, if found guilty, is levied a fine equal to the damages done plus whatever additional penalties need to be awarded. The accounts of anyone who suffered a loss is credited the damages done by order of the court. The guilty person is given a schedule according to which the debits, created by the awards, can be liquidated. If the guilty abides by the schedule, he or she regains or retains full citizenship. If the schedule is resisted, further penalties are added, and at a prescribed point the guilty persons are ostracized. The guild ultimately bans those who will not reconcile their accounts from entering the jurisdiction of the Pacific guilds on threat of imprisonment and forced service. Ending unemployment forever for everyone. Unemployment is probably the most irrational aspect of the Nimrodian system. If we were to think of what might be the most illogical situation a society could entertain, it would probably be people being unemployed. In fact, we only have to add to the numbers of the unemployed to collapse a society. The Great Depression was a depression because too many people were not working. What level of insanity is this? Millions being unemployed in a nation where businesses were closing because no one purchased their product. In a world where everyone eats, what is more unjust than there being some who do not work, or worse, not helping produce the goods and services they themselves use? The Bible even says those who will not work neither shall they eat. What is employment? But people helping people within the context of a set of reconciled accounts to ensure reciprocity. A unit of account is necessary to keep the exchanges in balance. Employment is possible because everyone has a skill that others can make use of. Markets enable everyone to focus on their own special skill and allow everyone else to do what they are best at doing. To maintain full employment only requires accountability. Debits and credits need to average out. Accounting is a way to track debits and credits to ensure that over a period of time they balance out. The a priori solution is a small group program. Every member of the group is provided an account. The member works for the Pacific Guild and is paid by it for the work they do. Their account is credited for work done. Members always have work to do in the form of the needs and wants of other members. Members have a duty to keep other members busy. In this way, full employment is always achieved without inflation or depression or the need for taxation. There is never any difficulty regarding job creation. There is always something to do, and all work is always credited to the proper account. When a job is done, the buyer of the work writes out a credit receipt showing the value of the work done. The doer of the work writes out a debit receipt showing he or she got paid. When there is one small group, the members' ability to help one another is limited. As the number of groups increase, the variety of the jobs they can do also multiplies. There is no limit to the size or complexity of the economy that can be created by multiplying the number of small groups. A new monetary model that solves the issue of crime. Money is not a substance, it is a unit of measure. The idea that one can see or feel money is the silliest of notions. A gold coin is not money. It may be used in lieu of money. It can be considered a standardized unit of trade, but that is not what money is. Standardized products simplify exchanges, but money is not a product. Selling a standardized product rather than one with wide variations in size and quality is akin to creating what this world calls money. This is why things like cigarettes and diamonds can be used in lieu of more conventional forms of money. Technically, any standardized product can be used as currency. It's only convention that determines we use a product created by banks and a similar one produced by the state as currency. Standardized or digitalized products offer convenience, but they are not money. Money is a unit of account. Unit of accounts are not visible except as numbers in an account book. A unit of account is comparable to other units of measure. A dollar is akin to an inch and differs from a degree in temperature only in the thing which it measures. A medium of exchange is a physical unit that facilitates trade. A medium of exchange is an asset owned by private enterprise or the state, used to facilitate trade. The medium of exchange is a product that can be sold or rented at a price. Sometimes the price is a cost plus a premium added to the loan, as is done with interest payments or by seigniorage. Either way, the value of the currency inflates to compensate the issuing authority. To create money is to create an accounting system. The system consists of a set of accounts that records debits and credits created by the exchange of goods and services. The records are kept using a unit of account, which is the monetary unit of the accounting system. In a priori economics, the unit of account is called a prefer, which is a contraction of preferred shares. When we work, we add value to real things. When we create value for others, we create a market. Our work produces equity, which is value added to an asset. The equity is recorded as a credit to the account of the worker who produced it. This balance is then available for purchases. This then is the market. The value added to the group by the work of the member creates equity, and equity can be denominated in terms of preferred shares. Preferred shares being a measure of the value added to the real things held by the small group. These preferred shares can be utilized as a currency. Equity is produced by work. Equity is a quantification of work in the way feet quantify distance or length. When workers produce goods and services, they are paid a living wage by the guild, because it is the guild that has value added to it. Equity is paid as a credit to the preferred share account of the member who produced it. Because the currency is created by the production of equity, there is no inflation, and the economy is stable without inflationary cycles. Because equity is created by labor, and the guild credits the worker's account with the value of the work done, debits and credits are kept in balance. The only way to acquire credits is by labor. In other words, all debits and credits are tracked by the accounts of the guild. There is no room for dishonesty or financial crime. There is no benefit for any small group to have members who do not work. Any group can always find things which need to be done. So, there is no unemployment. If everyone is working and everyone is paid for the work they do and economic crime is eliminated, economic problems cease to exist. The process used by the small groups for eliminating crime was given above. Eliminating taxation, inflation, and the state. Barter has no inflation because value is exchanged for value. Every dollar of taxation and every dollar printed and every dollar of debt produces inflation. Inflation is negative value being exchanged for a positive value. When currency is created irrespective of production, it is the same as an imaginary product being created to be exchanged for real products and services. Scam artists sell security from their violence in exchange for real goods and services, driving up the cost of these things. It's just another way the state take without giving, which means they leverage power into property. To eliminate inflation requires eliminating the free-riding state, and its allies. The key to this is the elimination of the financial market in all its forms. Financial markets promise a backdoor into property ownership, but usually trades the real value of the client's property for the artificial value of a financial vehicle. Regardless, the access to real wealth is distributed wider than would be warranted if the producer of the wealth retained control of what he or she produced. No state can exist without inflating the currency because every state sells freedom in the form of licenses for property. The financial products of the state generate tax revenues as income. However, the income is not matched with the production of value. No agency that produces inflation produces anything of value. This use of financial vehicles to acquire property could not happen without the direct or indirect involvement and participation of the state. The a priorian algorithm enables intentional communities and cooperatives to produce every kind of product a community needs, even those things considered to be public goods. A priorian cooperatives need only the labor theory of value and a receipt book to generate an alternative economy. The possibility of eliminating inflation and unemployment has long been debated, but all that needs to be done is to remove all of the financial vehicles from the straight market, and the labor theory of value can easily be implemented. Eliminate the world's financial vehicles, and we can put our political jurisdictions into the hands of a local cooperative. The ones who live in a location are the ones responsible for its assets. Cooperatives eliminate the issue of owner's capital. The members of a cooperative help one another in a small group setting. The cooperative pays the member for the work they do. When owner's capital is no longer an issue, income from investments is not a factor that needs to be factored in. All taxation contributes to inflation, and the only exchange that is not inflationary is barter. That is a value-for-value exchange. But as we know, it is nearly impossible to do this with physical goods. However, converting goods and services into an equity equivalent makes barter exchange possible. Converting labor into equity units is also why a priorian coups are able to produce public goods, such as highways and schools. In Perfecton, a community composed to a priorian cooperatives, public goods are created when one sector builds something for another sector. In fact, creating public works is just a B2B transaction. Every good or service has a value determined by the labor it contains. Perfecton prices goods and services in accordance with the labor theory of value. This gives the system a standard theory of pricing. There is no price gouging. Labor values are converted into units of account by the cooperative. Units of account are what is commonly understood as cash. Therefore, the cooperative uses cash accounting. There are 12 different classes of cooperatives linked to the 12 economic sectors. Each sector encompasses a type of specialization. Each sector can and does buy and sell with the other sectors. The transportation sector transports goods, and the construction sector builds what is needed by the other sectors. Roads built by the construction sector at the behest of the transportation sector means the buyer's account be debited and the seller's account be credited the cost of the road. This process of debiting the buyer's account and crediting the seller's account occurs regardless of whether the buyer is an individual or an economic sector. The direct purchase of goods by the sector that requires them eliminates the need for the state. If the regulatory state is eliminated, we eliminate the need for taxation, and when the state and taxation is eliminated, we no longer have inflation. A summary of the a priorian mission. A priorian is a suite of programs designed to create a perfect mind. A perfect mind requires we guide moral citizens towards a comprehensive response to the Nimrodian system. The main vehicle by which we do this is the a priorian cooperative, a business model that eliminates the state and all freeloaders. The creation of a perfect mind requires a perfect moral reality. It is not that one cannot have one without the other, one is the other. They are conciliant. A priorian apologetic represents the test group in an experiment based on the pure and applied science of apologetic, sometimes referred to as theologics. Truth can be measured, and the key measure of truth is the value citizens add to their political jurisdictions. If we as a community are not progressing, we are not rooted in the truth. Therefore, the ability to create employment and economic development is crucial in guiding us towards the truth. Truth can be equated with logical coherency. If what we do produces economic decay, war, and depression, we cannot be on the right path. If we are not on the right path, we will encounter incompatible or contradictory elements in our theory. A priorian is the only theory that proposes an experimental demonstration as a solution to mankind's social problems. If our actions create problems, our theory, and whatever algorithm we use, is a failure. A prioria is an experiment that applies the theories of a priorian apologetic. Results demonstrate a priorian apologetic to be a legitimate scientific theory and a prioria a valid experiment with test and control groups and a means to quantify results. A priorian apologetic gives us the only feasible way to create economic development. The a priorian cooperative, or perfectin, has no income inequality, social division, unemployment, taxation, inflation, depression, and other negative consequences. A priorian apologetic as a theory precludes financial crime. A priorian uses a unit of account that is secure from fraud and scams. The a priorian experiment centers on a cooperative market. These are standalone test groups composed of up to 15 persons. They are adaptable to any situation and are able to be set up by anyone, anywhere, with no cost or risk to the participants. Whether we are talking about Africa or Muskoka, the system works with the people and the places that have citizens who want to take control of their identity. There is no other solution because everything else that exists poses risk to those who use it. No system equals the power of a priorian apologetic, because a prioria is an experiment that eliminates risk. Our mission is to usher in the new era of perfection and in the era of freedom that has destroyed faith by permitting too much risk into the system. There is only one other organizational profile available to us, and this is the one a priorian apologetic is designed to replace. The alternative to a priorism is the Nimrodian system. Nimrodism is designed to create freedom and exploit the risk that is associated with it. As risk is increased poverty, inequality, power disparities, crime, depression, economic cycles, and the height costs which destroy the economy also increase. The Nimrodian system produces the risk that God's design was designed to prevent. In short, we are free to accept the risks associated with this system or join the experiment devised by God to prove his path is the path to truth. The way to destroy freedom and bring in the age of perfection is to join or form an a priorian cooperative. After 60 years of trying to eliminate the risks created by the Nimrodian system, only to see our efforts producing the same result over and over again.